Hello and welcome to Reimagining Cyber, the podcast where we unpack the most pressing cybersecurity issues with experts from across the industry. My name is Ben, producer of the show and host for today, and we're going to be diving into a topic that's recently been flagged as a national security threat, fast flux. Joining me is Tyler Moffitt, Senior Security Analyst at OpenText Cybersecurity, who recently wrote a great piece breaking down how fast flux has evolved from a spammer's trick to a sophisticated tactic used by cyber criminals and even nation-state actors. Tyler, it's great to have you on.
Thanks. Glad to be here, and I'm excited to talk about this one.
Yeah, let's start right from the top. For listeners who may not be familiar, what exactly is fast flux?
So it's not exactly new, but it's a technique used by cyber criminals to basically hide malicious infrastructure behind basically rapidly changing the network of IP addresses. So think of it like a moving target. Every time you try to track it down or you have the IP address of the server behind the malicious domain, it's already shifted to a new compromised machine and new IP address. There's basically two types, okay? There's single flux, where it's just the IP addresses are changing constantly too quickly for you to maneuver, or double flux, where both the IP address and the DNS name servers constantly rotate, which is even harder to track and shut down.
So if it isn't a new tactic, why is it getting so much attention now?
Yeah, so I'd say it's been around for like almost a decade, but it was originally just seen in like spam and phishing campaigns, but it's since, I won't lie, the introduce of AI and its sophistication and change in scale, right? Basically, it just happened like a week or two, not even 2 weeks ago. The NSA and CISA issued alerts, basically classifying fast flux as a national security issue because now it's being used to support ransomware operations in their command and control servers, the botnets, like all the instructions that the payloads get to do all the nasty stuff inside your environment is now using this tactic. So not just spam and phishing, now ransomware is using it. And so under heavy takedown pressure, which we did see a good amount, I would say last year, of policing entities taking down or trying to take down infrastructure of ransomware operators, this just makes it way much more resilient and difficult to take down and really just critical for long-running attacks.
So then, in the current threat landscape, how are cyber criminals actually using fast flux?
Yeah, the adaptation to ransomware. So not only is it from the phishing sites to malware delivery, we're also seeing it in protection for their payloads and even the leak sites. The leak sites are really important for criminals. So one thing we've seen shift and change, I would say this past year or two, the trend, if you will, give you a little backstory. Ransomware is no longer about encrypting the files and then charging you money for the keys to get your files back. So many businesses are familiar with the ransomware business model. It's well over 12 years old now. And most businesses are adept, at least, at getting their files back and doing dry run scenarios where they bounce back, pretend they've lost their files and are able to get them back. Now the damage, and I'd say the squeeze, the motivational squeeze that they put on businesses to pay the ransom, I would say mainly comes from the extortion part. So the damage to brand, reputation, crisis comms, stock market price, so you publicly traded, all that nonsense is awful to deal with because there's also data privacy regulations and GDPR, all that stuff comes into play. You have X amount of time to disclose if you've been breached or hit. And even when you do have to disclose, everybody hates you. Nobody wants to, if you're working with a bank and then you learn about how they stole your email, your social, your address, and your all this stuff, and they give you, we'll give you to consolidate this, we'll give you a year's worth of free identity protection. You don't feel great about that. You don't feel great about the bank that you're working with. Nobody wants to deal with that, right? And so it is attractive to the victims to pay these large ransoms to just sweep it under the rug, even if they were able to make do with the files being taken from them. It's the leaking part and them being sold on the dark web and everybody knowing about it. That's the biggest squeeze and that's the biggest motivation. So the leak sites, that was the backstory. The leak sites are crucial to this. All right. Absolutely imperative that everybody can access the leak sites and they can tell you, if you don't pay, we're on our countdown. We're going to give it to everybody or sell it on the dark web. So the leak sites are crucial. And so basically they're able now through fast flux to be able to protect these leak sites, can't be shut down, or at least extremely hard And even if they were to shut them down, it's like they pivoted it, rehosted it within minutes. So it's each DNS lookup returns a different IP, making it nearly impossible for defenders to block all endpoints in time. So some fast flux domains survive takedown attempts 6 times longer than previous. So we're like a 6x increase in their efficacy and resilience, if that makes sense. So that's why NSA and CISA are now making a big deal about it.
You said there nearly impossible for defenders. That would hopefully indicate that there is a chance for defenders to do something about it. How do they even detect or stop something like this?
Yeah, it's tricky. They can mimic legitimate services like CDNs, which also use rotating IPs. But I'd say the key differences from this are fast flux domains resolved to IPs with a very short time to live. And I won't lie, that is something that's suspicious that your telemetry and data and your teams, your SOC teams can be aware of. But the IPs are often linked to consumer ISPs, not big cloud providers. Another point is that you'll also see an unusually high number of IPs for a single domain in a short time. That right there. So unusually high number of IPs for a single domain in a short time. That's malicious, buddy. And so detection relies on tools like passive DNS, threat intelligence, anomaly detection in the DNS traffic, and some endpoint and XDR solutions. We have a DNSP solution like we do at OpenText that correlate DNS with activity and known threat behaviors. There are things to pull up out and do, and there are solutions that you can employ to make sure you keep track of this.
What then should enterprises be doing differently to protect against fast flux tactics?
I'd say first, visibility into DNS traffic is key. Like I was saying earlier, these things you want to keep track of, like unusually high number of IPs for a single domain. You have to have visibility in order to be able to even see that and be able to trigger, oh, that's a red flag, right? So many orgs overlook it, but it's really critical for spotting fast flux behavior early. DNS filtering. Honestly, this one's huge. If you don't have a DNS protection or filtering, get one for sure. It's definitely a layer of protection that you won't regret. And it's like the layered security approach, which I've always advocated, is super important. You can't just rely on one layer of protection and say, that's got 100% and that'll protect you. There's no layer that's 100%. So you've got to stack layers that work at different attack surface vectors and at different stages of the attack, right? And threat intelligence feeds, right? They help you block these malicious domains. That's really important. Also recommend segmenting your network, right? To limit the blast radius if a device gets compromised. Limit the exposure. You don't want them to immediately compromise the device and be able to immediately spread laterally and compromise the whole environment. Also, monitor for signs of outbound DNS abuse, like devices contacting hundreds and hundreds of domains in short timeframes. Again, that's probably the biggest takeaway from this. Unusually high number of IPs on single domains or in a short amount of time is how you watch it. And then if you're looking for what something malicious is going on in your machines, outbound DNS abuse, hundreds of domains in a short time frames. Like stuff like that is just huge red flags, and you've got to watch out for it.
Looking at this, the big picture, if you like, from a national security standpoint, what makes fast flux such a serious concern?
I would say that the biggest enabler here is it allows attackers to maintain persistent foothold, right? Even under active defense. National state actors can use it to keep their infrastructure live during extended campaigns, whether like espionage, disinformation, or attacks on critical infrastructure. Like previously, a lot of the times they focused on quickness, right? Get in, get out, and as many people as you can compromise within that time or campaign that you're doing, great. And so what this has allowed them to do, when I talked about that 6x essentially efficacy or length of time in which they can sustain their attack and evasiveness, allows their campaigns to be that more resilient and go on longer. And this is usually what I was talking about, is something in a trend we saw with phishing and malware. We saw phishing campaigns used to just be shotgun, spread it out, spray and pray, as many as you can within a certain campaign time frame that you stipulate before vendors or nation states or just general security comes in and is able to detect and stop and shut down and prevent. you had a certain amount of window and you would just get as many as you could, spray and pray, right? And that was phishing and campaigns, and translated also to ransomware. And now that they have this increased resiliency and in their attacks, they're able to last a whole lot longer. And so that's pretty huge. And then not just from a phishing and mouse spam campaigns, now that what's being adopted by ransomware gangs, which we just saw, like I said previously, 2024 was while we never caught anybody at the very top. And I guess I need to give you a explanation on how it goes with ransomware gangs. It's never, when you hear about Akira or Lockbit or Black Basta or Ransom Hub, right? All these dark angels, these really big, giant groups of ransomware that catch all the headlines, hit all these people and healthcare and infrastructure. It's never actually the group or the people at the top who are coding those payloads and infrastructure. They're never actually attacking anybody. They all work on an affiliate model. Okay. And so how this works, it's risk mitigation. Okay. And so the purpose behind their whole business model of ransomware as a service is the people who are in charge, the ransomware developers at the very top. They code the payloads, they create the infrastructure, and then they basically lease it out to affiliates. They contract affiliates, and these affiliates don't need to know anything. Like, it's only getting easier and easier, dummy idiot mode, to where you don't need to know any coding whatsoever. You're just given everything provided to you, told how everything works, given all these tools and instructions on how to set them up and use them, and then you conduct the attack. So whenever you hear about anybody being hit, it's an affiliate who's conducting the attack using tools by someone way smarter than them. And so the affiliate's conducting the attack, and the affiliate's dealing with the victim for the ransom. But that's all the risk. Okay. Whenever you hear about any of these people, getting caught or arrested, or money seized from the exchanges, the cryptocurrency and the Bitcoin, that's the most dangerous part, receiving the Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin is not anonymous. People think it is. It's not. All addresses ever, X, Y to Z, are all visible since the beginning of Bitcoin in 2009.
As we discussed a few weeks ago, of course.
We sure did. And so that's how these guys get caught. They receive the Bitcoin. They don't launder it correctly. And then they send it straight to an exchange. And all these exchanges, if you're going to cash it out for dollars, euros, pounds, rubles, whatever currency you're going for, they require what's called KYC. So know your customer, where they pull a whole bunch of information, a whole bunch of data that they collect on you to even create an account to cash out. Your on and off ramps, right? This is hugely regulated and only gets more regulated. If those of you who haven't joined a cryptocurrency exchange and wanted to cash out or deposit and put your money in, to give you an example, I had to take a selfie holding my passport up. That's pretty huge before they would even let me do that. And so the same sort of deal for these affiliates. When they want to cash out that money from the victim paying them, that's what they're doing. And if they don't launder it correctly, it can be directly traced from the victim, who then, after they pay the ransom to be done with this, and they report it usually to the FBI. Those of you who have been hit and you don't know how to report, ic3.gov is where you fill out those reports. I've filled out many. And essentially, they subpoena the exchange. They see them transfer the money directly to themselves, directly to the exchange, and then the FBI or whoever subpoenas the exchange, they get all the information, and then they go arrest them. And so that's whenever you see big policing entities showing success and arresting these people, they're only ever catching the affiliates at the bottom, okay? And so the developers at the top who are in charge of this, they're the ones that never get caught. We have never seen any top level, sort of the executive person in charge, get caught. And whenever they get any attention where like their affiliates get arrested or something like that, or their infrastructure seized and taken down, when you see these takedowns, you know what they do? They go on vacation, they spend some money, they take a few months, and then they come back and they pivot and they rebrand. And so we actually have a threat report coming out I hope to talk about later, where I go through and talk about all the sort of the changes in the names after they go on their vacations and just rebrand. And they come up with it, but it's the same guys. It's the same group of guys at the top, just coming up with a new name, new infrastructure, and then basically doing advertising for affiliates. And that's how that works, right? And so ransomware gangs, along with this fast flux, have even more ability to evade these takedowns. And so they get to even just avoiding from ransomware games. If we talk about, let's face it, we're currently in a information war, right? Cyber war. And we have been for years. This is debatable on how long you ever want to be between nation state and nation state, whether it's Russia and Ukraine, USA and China, whatever you want to call it, however long you want to say it's been going on. But even for propaganda sites and misinformation that you want to have up and keep it up, this is where Fast Flux can help you and keep it up for as long as possible. It's really just a force multiplier for any malicious actors who need resilience, if that makes sense.
Tyler, terrific stuff as per normal. Before I let you go, any final thoughts for listeners?
Yeah, I just want to mention that Fast Flux is one piece of a larger trend where attackers are just innovating their infrastructure and as we're building defenses, right? It's cat and mouse game. AI is definitely playing a part in how they come up with these ideas and how to obfuscate, but so is defenses, right? DNS, though, is often overlooked. It is a layer that not everybody has when you come in and you evaluate what types of security layer protections you have. Obviously, everybody's going to have gaps. Everybody with budget, they've decided which layers they want to combine to create protection as best as they can, covering the full attack surface area. And obviously, you can't buy them all. I mean, maybe some companies super large can, but not every other company, small or medium-sized business can. So they've decided which ones they want to do. And I would say DNS protection layers are overlooked. And it's a key battleground now. And so I recommend taking a look into it.
Tyler, thanks again.
Thanks for having me on.
Be sure then to check out Tyler's blog on the OpenText Cybersecurity community for a deeper dive. And thanks so much for listening. Please do remember to follow the show. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.